Hey, hello, I'm JulieJo. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. If you're not new here, welcome back. Today, I wanted to go over everything I have been able to find, hear, read about the 8-passenger situation. I want to know what the heck's going on. I want to know where we are. I want to make sure they're getting held accountable. I want to know what's going on with Kevin and why he's made some absolutely wild decisions recently that we're going to go over. I want to know, where are the other 2 children? There's 6 children in this family. 2 are out of high school and college. The other 2 are the 2 that were found at the home, horribly abused. And then where are the middle 2? So I'm going to try to answer some questions of what do we know as of now. So let's get started.
It's the night that we're gonna fall in love. I don't care about you and him. I don't care about what has been. I only care about your soft skin. Cause we're still sleeping in my head. I don't care about you and him. I don't care about what has been. I only care about your soft skin. Cause we're still sleeping in my head.
Above in the cards, you're going to see 2 different videos. The first one's going to be the first video that covers everything that happened at the beginning and what went down with the abuse and the situation of Russell getting out, being found by the neighbor, asking for help. The next video, I cover specifically Jodi Hildebrandt and why I think she's a cult leader and just the connections classroom and everything awful with that. She is a cult leader and I do believe she is the mastermind in all of this. And then now this video, I want to cover what we know and now what's going on with Kevin and where the kids are and so on and so forth, like I mentioned before. I was curious where the other 2 middle children were. We knew where the 2 older ones were, the 2 younger ones were. Where are the middle kids? Well, come to find out, Ruby called Pam Botcher. Pam Botcher is a part of the Connections classroom group with Jodi and Ruby, which in my opinion is a huge red flag. This is what Botcher said about the situation. After dialogue and questioning, Botcher then explained that around noon that day, she received a call from Ruby Frankie and told her that she had a family emergency and asked if Botcher could pick up blank and blank, which are the 2 middle children. According to Botcher, Ruby asked if her 2 children could go to her house with her for a while. Botcher told the police officers the request was not odd since she had had blank and blank over to her residence before to do housework and other chores for her. The 2 middle girls that were with Pam were informed by DCFS workers that they were to stay with their older sister Shari or be placed with a foster family. Initially, the 2 didn't actually want to go with Shari. They wanted to stay with Pam, but they eventually were placed with their older sister. I thought to myself, why would the 2 middle children want to stay with Pam instead of go with Shari? And the first thing that crossed my mind was they haven't known Shari. What they know about Shari is what Ruby, Jodi, and Pam have been telling them about Shari. I kind of see this happen a lot when there's family feuds or situations that happen where family members disagree, especially in divorces and whatnot, where one parent's going to say a lot of bad crap about the other parent, and you know, a lot of times both parents do it. But in this situation, because Shari, in Ruby's opinion, is not quote unquote living in truth, who knows the awful things that Ruby has said to those 2 middle children about Shari. I mean, if I had heard what they heard, I probably wouldn't want to go with Shari either. Hopefully, luckily, they see now that Ruby was wrong, and I'm sure that Jodi had a huge part to play in it too, since I think she's personally the mastermind in all of this. That's the update with that situation. They are together, and we can move on from Pam Botcher. If any more comes out about Pam, I'll let you know, but just a reminder, she's a huge red flag. She is friends with Jodi and Ruby and was a part of the Connections classroom, which is a cult, by the way. The next part of this situation that I was honestly stunned by, because I not necessarily had his back at first, but felt bad for him at first, is Kevin Frankie. So Kevin acted like he had no idea this was going on. He's just kind of been gone. He's been absent. He's been an absent father completely. But we can't forget that he was a part of the abuse on the 8-Passengers channel for as long as the channel was there. He allowed Ruby to do it as well. He didn't just let Ruby do it. He played a huge part in it. And that refresher reminded me that this actually makes a little bit of sense of what he did here. So let's get into what he did. What we know, like I said, the 2 middle children decided they wanted to go with Shari. Kevin, after a year of not being at the house, their house that they were all lived in at one point, came to the house and the door was broken down. Why? Because the police were there. They broke down the door. No one was home. They were looking for evidence, yada, yada, yada. And since Shari had the 2 middle children, the police were like, hey, you can come to the house, get what they need. She's a 20-year-old who probably doesn't have clothes for them. I mean, those kids probably need stuff, right? So that happened. Like I said, Kevin came in and was like, we are burglarized. Someone broke in, blah, blah. The police said, no, that was us. That was us. We broke in. We needed to see if anyone was home. We needed to get evidence. And he was like, no, some of my things are gone. The police were like, yes, Shari came in. We said she could take what she needed for the kids. And he said, no, Shari took some of my things. She stole from me, and I want to press charges. Kevin, a neglectful, abusive father of these children, who just decided to show up after all of this shit went down and act like he had no idea what was going on, showed up to a home he hadn't been in a year, where all that stuff was for over a year, without him being there using it, and said he wanted to press charges on his daughter who grabbed it on her way out of the house. Luckily, the police said, no, they're not going to press charges. Shari was like, whatever, I'll bring the stuff back, right? So she brought some of the stuff back that he was so upset about being gone that he hadn't had for over a year anyway.
There you go. Is it all there?
Yes. Yeah, explain to me again why this was not robbery.
Because it's a civil issue. You guys are family. She's been in the house before. You haven't been in the house in a year. She had interest in the items. She didn't take them with the intention to deprive you of them. So theft, that's the theft code. We have to prove intent to deprive you of the items. And that wasn't her intent in having them. So the detective sergeant said that we're not going to charge her for anything.
Okay. I'll have to do some more research on that.
You're welcome to do that. If you want to follow up with our detective, you can do so.
Okay.
Yeah, he'll be here on Tuesday. His name's Sergeant McCoy. Okay. You're welcome. Take care.
Kevin got mad at the police and said that he was going to sue the police department because they wouldn't press charges on Shari. Let's remember that Shari is a college student. Her two youngest siblings were just found horribly abused by their mother and Jodi Hildenbrandt. She lived as a part of this traumatic abusive family and in this household with her dad, who was also a part of that for her entire life. Shari's been a big part in having to deal with everything that's going on in this entire situation, likely having to work with the police, having to do way more than a young 20-year-old should or ever have to be a part of when it comes to something like this. And now she has her two middle siblings who likely think terribly of her because of what the mother, Ruby Frankie, has put in their ear. I mean, this girl is in a horrible, difficult situation, and this dad, Kevin, wants to try to press charges on her. I'm very glad that the police were like, you're being ridiculous. KUTV has been covering this a lot. They are in Utah. They're in that area. They're KUTV2, and they're here on YouTube. I will put sources down below of what I used to get this information. They'll be in those sources. But they were supposed to do an interview with Kevin Frankie and his attorney. They canceled, and KUTV2 reached out to Kevin Frankie's attorney and was like, what's going on with this? We want to comment on why he did this. You know what Kevin Frankie's attorney said? Kevin didn't do either. He and Shari are working together on bygones and resuming a loving and healthy father-daughter relationship. His attorney then continued, Kevin is still trying to understand and correct the upside-down world that he was dealt. It is a lot to deal with all at once. So Randy Kester, who's Kevin Frankie's attorney, said that that didn't happen. I find that really hard to believe because it did happen. At this point, what I think is going on is that Randy Kester, Kevin Frankie's attorney, is trying to do damage control and paint Kevin as a victim in this situation. I'm sorry, I don't think Kevin is a victim in this situation. I think he had a big part to play in it from the very beginning with the 8 Passengers channel. Now, he had less of a hand in this Jodi and Ruby situation that's going on now, but nonetheless, I can't sit here and believe that he had no idea what was going on. I can't sit here and act like he's a victim because he's not. There are 6 children that are victims, 2 in particular that have been heavily abused, and then 4 that have been horribly abused. Kevin is not the victim, and he does not deserve some victimhood. And the fact that Kevin's attorney said Kevin is still trying to understand and correct the upside down world that was dealt him, it's a lot to deal with all at once. Yeah, what about Shari though? What about all of his children? What about Chad? Chad is the second oldest who's also in college. I understand if some of you disagree, but that's just how I feel about the situation. And looking at it from this, I'm sorry, I don't find Kevin to be a victim whatsoever. Unless something else comes out differently, that's my opinion on the situation. I would love to hear yours. Anyway, that was a lot of emotion, but there's also one more thing I wanted to talk about when it came to Kevin, and it was the fact that his nephew Matthew did an interview about him. And I wanted to show you this little section where Matthew was saying that Kevin should not get the kids and that Kevin should be charged with child neglect and serve time for what that he has done. He has been neglectful and abusive to his children, in my opinion, just looking at the 8 Passengers channel stuff.
And as sad as I am to say it, I think Kevin should be arrested too. He, me and my dad have been having a hard time believing that he had zero contact with his family, that he had no idea that, Ruby would leave them for long stretches of time.
So you can let me know what you think about that below. But I want to move on to Jodi and Ruby. And this is the last thing we're going to touch in this video for now. And when more comes out and it builds up more and I can break it down for you, I will do another one. Maybe, maybe not. But this is what we know. Jessie, who is Jodi's niece, has done a podcast and done a few news interviews about Jodi because Jessie lived with Jodi for a while. Jodi was horrifically abusive to Jessie. I mean, the worst of the worst. Please go, if you can handle, talk of abuse, watch Jessie's interviews and listen to the podcast because Jessie's open about what they went through. And I think it paints a picture of what Russell and what Ruby said about Russell, and I'll kind of get into that. But please go watch that. I'm going to have them down below. Ruby said that the reason that her and Jodi had Russell tied up and malnourished and all this was because he was addicted to sex and addicted to pornography and was abusive. They were saying this stuff, and Jessie said, yeah, that's what Jodi said I was. That's what Jodi said about me. But I wasn't. I didn't even know what any of that stuff was. So what Jessie explains is that Jodi is a mastermind at this, and she has done this for over a decade at this point. When you hear what Jessie went through and what Jodi did to Jessie, you think, that is almost exactly what Ruby's saying about Russell. Russell, by the way, is the son who got out of the window and went to the neighbors and called the police, needed help. Russell's extremely brave for doing that. But Ruby was saying how horrible Russell was and kind of trying to pretty much say that the 12-year-old boy was the reason he was being put in the situation that he was in. It was his own fault because he was addicted to this and he was terrible and he was hurting people and he was blah, blah, blah. But come to find out, that's something that Jodi has made sure that other children have experienced, and she's put on to people like Jessie as well, when in reality none of it's true. Something that Jessie said that stuck with me in one of their interviews, and I'll try to play it here so that you have the exact quote.
And so to hear Ruby tell the world that her child is a sex addict, a predator, and has been addicted to porn since he was 3 years old, it just echoes exactly the things that she was telling me and telling everyone around me. And I know that I think I don't know if I got this right, but I'm pretty sure that she's saying that he even confessed to it. Well, I also confessed to things that I didn't do as a way of trying to get the abuse to stop.
So you will say you did something just so you can make them happy so they'll stop doing it, right? Because they want you to admit something. They want you to admit sin. They want you to admit this and that because they say that's what you're doing, but you don't even know what that is. That's something that Jessie experienced heavily with her Aunt Jodi. I'll put a clip in here because Jessie says it way better than I do.
So what is happening, it just echoes so close to home of what she did to me. And the repercussions, the emotional and physical repercussions of those actions, like the fact that she can, because the thing that's so sinister about this is that it can't be disproven. So even if like she goes to prison, his name is cleared, it will never be fully cleared because it cannot be disproven. So this is going to potentially follow him for the rest of his life. So even with those children being taken out of her care, she is still abusing them.
And to end the video, there's no bail hearing yet. So luckily they're still in jail, and there are 6 counts of felony child abuse on both of them. So I hope that they are in jail the rest of their lives. But who knows? I hope there will be no bail hearing. I hope they stay in jail. I feel like the more you peel back the layers, the more wild and intense it gets. And I do recommend to go and watch a lot of what Jessie has said and even what Matthew said about Kevin and that situation. Jessie Hildenbrandt did some really intense, difficult, important interviews. There are a couple more channels that I recommend you go and watch. I was introduced to Jordan and McKay. They used to be a part of the Mormon religion, and they're out and they talk a lot about Mormonism, and they go over this situation a lot. I think that they are important people to listen to. I know that the wife, she is a social worker, so she even has more to add to the situation from her perspective as a social worker. And then there is Jen, who's also known as Fundy Fridays, that I think does great videos over religion, and also the Mormon Stories podcast. There are several people and channels to watch on it, but those specifically are ones that I've watched. I hope this kind of summed everything up for you. I got passionate, which I think is understandable when it came to the Kevin thing, and I'm not gonna lie about it. I'm not gonna try to like push my feelings back. I'm upset, and frankly, I just don't think he's a victim, and I think he's trying to play that, trying to act like he was a dad who didn't know what was going on and he was clueless, and frankly, I just don't believe that. But it's okay if we disagree, and hopefully something comes out to where I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong about that. Please let me know your thoughts on this below. What are your thoughts? What's your take? I know that it can be confusing, so I thought this might be helpful. Hopefully it was. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you do want to see more. You can hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye.
Show you what I'm all about. Make up for what we lost. Tonight is the night that we're gonna fall in love. I don't care about you and him. I don't care about what has been. I only care about yours.